Hi, everybody. I'm Pete Christensen,
I'm Coffee Brown.
and welcome to episode 28 of
Don't Die Dumb.
Now, a subject we touched on earlier that we're going to touch upon again is mainly for the people of New Mexico and Texas. It's Project Jupiter. Explain what Project Jupiter is. It's an AI.
Well, it's a data farm.
It's a data
So Project Jupiter is the idea that they'll build this giant server farm in Doña Ana, New Mexico.
which, for people outside the state, because I have people Wisconsin and Minnesota watch, that's way down to southeastern corner near Texas. Go ahead. Sorry.
It's a place that does not have a ton of water, nor a huge population, nor a huge technological infrastructure. So this would be a real game changer for the local community. And I'm seeing ads, Pete, that say, we'll upgrade the water system.
The ad says they'll use no extra water.
We'll use no extra water, they promised.
They're claiming they're going to produce 2,500 jobs.
Right. So jobs, wages, water, what's not to love?
First of all, let me say this. It's going to create 2,500 jobs in the construction. After that, 750 jobs. That's it.
Right. A lot of these upfront promises. We see this over and over and over. In fact, I think we've seen it with pretty much every company that's ever come to New Mexico. And probably other states would say the same thing. They make all these promises up front, but they never get fulfilled, and there's no real enforcement of them.
Now, the governor is for it, which shocks me because she's really been great on the environment. But for this, she's in favor of it. I'm not sure why, unless she thinks that we need the economic basis to help us with our solar and wind projects for the future.
That would be a good case if there were an economic basis. But here's the problem. New Mexico, like a lot of places, sells ourselves to corporations on the basis of tax cuts and low wages. But the entire point of bringing them in is taxes and wages. So if we're fishing for taxes and wages by offering low wages and low taxes, where is the benefit? And this is a state which is already in a water deficit that will only deepen every year as this drought, which is normal. It's not a phase we're going through. When we had water, that was a phase we were going through. This drought is the normal for New Mexico. And massive uses of water aren't something we can afford. Now, maybe you can make a case for it if there's actually taxes and wages tied to it. But if you're cutting those too, then I'm not sure what the payoff is going to be.
I'm not sure either. What else would you like to say about this subject before we move on?
So one of the things I just learned in the past week is that data farms significantly increase the temperature in the area where they are. And that shouldn't amaze me, except that I think I underestimated the scale of these giant server farms. But on average, and this is around the world, where there's a lot of these server farms in multiple places around the world. They are so huge that the power grid isn't robust enough to support them. They often have to create their own power supply and their own power grid because the local city power grid isn't enough for them. So it shouldn't surprise me, but it did, that they on average raised the temperature for miles around themselves 3.4 degrees. And in places, that's an average, the highs were up around 16 degrees.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
And
right.
down there, it's already hotter in blazes in the summer.
Now, luckily, global warming is a hoax. It's a convincing one because every summer for the last 30 summers has been the hottest summer on record. So it's a pretty convincing hoax, but it's the Chinese tricking us. And I think they're doing it by selling us thermometers that are just falsely labeled. So really it's 70 degrees, but it feels like 104 to you because the thermometer says it's 104 and you're pouring sweat and your clothes are on fire. So you think, well, maybe that's true.
Well, the guy that invented the chill factor passed away. He was 94, but he felt like 76. 76.
Well, he was 76 centigrade.
Yeah, there you go. Now, I want to get onto a subject posed by a listener, a viewer, and that's demonic possession.
I'm for it.
Are you okay? Good. And let me say this, there are thousands of cases of documented supposedly documented demonic possession. Of course, they're not all turn your head in a circle and spit out pea soup, Linda Blair possession. And you have to separate I went to the casino and lost the entire family inheritance, and I was caught with a member of the opposite sex I shouldn't have been with. The devil made me do it. From the person that is either possessed or possibly mentally ill. Arthur C. Clarke noticed this. Now, could possession be self-induced? That's what I think. Arthur C. Clarke, the man from Sri Lanka, as you know, he told me that last week, and the man who wrote 2001: A Space Oddity. No, Odyssey. He did a decades-long study of people with stigmata, and what he found out was very interesting. Well, you be the judge of this. People with stigmata, the wound in the stomach that Christ had on the cross, it was sometimes on the right, sometimes on the left. And when he went to these people's homes, if it was on the right, the religious picture they had of the crucifixion had the wound on the right. When it was on the left, the wound was on the left. And then there were some children in some congregations that would get stigmata, but the whole congregation was thrilled that they had this harbinger of the Lord in their church. Could it be self-induced? I claim it is, but I don't know. Any thoughts on the idea?
In some cases, it has been shown to be conscious fraud. I don't say that that's true in every case, and I don't know to what degree psychosomatic effects can mimic these things.
Okay, back up the bus back into the station for a second. Now, are you talking about stigmata or possession?
Stigmata.
Okay.
I'm sure that, well... So
and I'm not impugning anybody's religion.
Nor am I. The fact that some cases are fraud doesn't mean every case is fraud. That
Correct.
wasn't what I was getting at. But circling back actually to exorcism for a minute, in 2010, I was a content provider for a radio news service. And one of my assignments was to interview a guy who had lived in Italy and went to study at the Vatican's School of Exorcism.
Really?
In America, the Catholic Church doesn't talk much about exorcism. Wow, I think we just died. Look how blue we are. The Catholic Church doesn't...
In my case, it's an improvement, but go ahead.
Doesn't talk much about exorcism in America. But in Italy, apparently, it's like a street corner clinic, like a first aid station. There's exorcism clinics everywhere. And we think of exorcism like Linda Blair, blah, floating in the air and spitting up pea soup, and it's a like once in a lifetime thing. In this guy's experience in Italy, it was you would go down like once a week or once a month for your 30-minute exorcism to get the devil driven out of you. It sounded to me like a version of what we might do with psychology or psychiatry.
Or confession.
Or confession. So in that culture, in the Italian Catholic culture, apparently it would be a pretty garden variety thing to say, yeah, the devil's in me, but I'm going down this Friday and we'll get it taken care of. And there's a lot of exorcists. So it's not a medieval thing that the Catholic Church doesn't do anymore. And it's not actually an obscure thing. It's just not much played up in America.
So are there stages? Now, I want to stick on possession, but are there stages of exorcism? Like, okay, if you got $20 and some free hamburger meat, I'll take care of you in an hour. If it's an extreme case, are there stages of exorcism?
In the way that he described it, it wasn't like if you had more money, you get more treatment. You could speculate that some clinics would work like that.
Yeah.
But there were varying degrees of severity. But most of them, it seemed like the most common pattern he was describing was like a 30-minute exorcism once a month.
And were all these done by the church or some guy named Pepe in the back of a moving van?
The people he was looking at were all trained by the Catholic Church.
Okay.
It is in a school for exorcism. And I apologize, but it's been 16 years, and I can't remember the name of the book offhand. But it was like a regular profession that you would enter into.
Now, I'm under the impression possession happens not because you want it to, not because you invited the devil in like a vampire in the old movies, but because you don't have beliefs. In other words, you have a seance and you have a young child that is of reasoning age, that is over the age of 8 or 9, but still has no religious conviction. That opens the portal for the entity to come in. They have no way to fight it off. However, if you have religious conviction, you can chant some mantra, Christ keep me safe, or whatever it might be, and that would keep this entity from entering you. Have you heard things of that nature?
Yes, but I wouldn't say that I've gotten the sense. It's not like my personal thing to deep research, but I have this sense that there's a whole lot of different theories about what exorcism is. And I know for a fact that's true across cultures. So we're right now talking about Catholic exorcism within the Catholic Christian faith. But every culture around the world has some version of demonic possession and exorcism.
Oh, I've seen documentaries of African tribes where they often drive out the demon from within a person. But I think in many of the older cultures, they thought that falling into epileptic fits was a form of possession, and they just had to get you through that.
So there's a cottage industry in explaining Joan of Arc. Was she a schizophrenic and she was hearing voices and she was so passionate about these voices that people bought into it? It's amazing how passion itself convinces people. I just know it! And, well, he must be right. He just knows it. That's not an argument in my mind. Or maybe she was having epileptic fits. Or maybe she was communing with God. Or maybe some other kind of magical being was communicating with her and telling her that it was God. How would she know the difference, right? But when modern people try to explain Joan of Arc, what they really say is, knowing what I already believe, how can I slot Joan of Arc into that? I don't know that there's a good handle on how to say, should the story of Joan of Arc change what I think I know about the world?
Now, before Joan of Arc was burnt at the stake, she went to a little chapel and she prayed. And she said, when the Lord came to her, there was a chill over her body. And Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, right off Wisconsin Avenue in downtown Milwaukee, took the Joan of Arc chapel brick by brick, brought it to America, and reassembled it.
Oh, wow.
Now, here's the interesting part. There's the brick that she knelt on. You can put your hand on it, kneel on it, and put a thermometer to it. They encourage you to. It's always 10 degrees cooler than any other area of the room.
It could be an interesting artifact of the just the mechanical structure of it, but it's also the case that in neuropsychology there's a term called frisson. If you've ever heard a sound that gave a shiver up your spine, and a lot of people experience this with different kinds of music. Another example of it is what's called ASMR, audio stimulation. I can't remember what all the initials stand for, but some people will get a kind of physical thrill when they hear certain kinds of pain, certain kinds of sound. And it can be, for some people it's crackling cellophane, for some people it's
nails on a chalkboard,
wet lip sounds, or whispering into a microphone. There's whole websites of people that whisper into a microphone because there's a whole audience that gets a thrill up their spine when they hear somebody whisper to them like that. So, if whatever else Joan of Arc was, I think she was passionate and sincere and believed the things that she said. And so that she would have a frisson because she was having a mystical experience, whatever the cause of that experience was. It could be drugs, it could be mental illness, it could be God, it could be magic fairies. I don't know what caused it, but whatever it was, it wouldn't surprise me at all that she would experience a shiver through her body.
So my question remains, can possession be self-induced? Can you think to yourself, this can't be me, I can't be acting. Now, what happened? The devil made me do it.
I'm as sure as I
changing.
can be that some possession is self-induced, that some possession is people creating a story in their mind to explain their own actions to themselves. But whether that's whether there's more to possession, the fact that for some people it's probably a purely psychological phenomenon doesn't tell us whether there's an external phenomenon. For the record, I don't think there is, but I don't know how I would test that.
Now, our next subject is something I just read about recently. People brought to my attention. I'm losing my hearing in both ears. I have to get hearing aids by the end of the month. And they brought up to me that that's a trait of future dementia.
Not exactly, but I'm glad that you brought that up because I've been seeing a lot of popular articles to that effect. There is some correlation between hearing loss and dementia. It's not directly that losing your hearing affects your ability to think, but as your hearing gets dimmed, the stimulus that's coming into your mind gets reduced on that channel, and your relationships with other people get blunted, and you stop hanging out with other people because it's embarrassing to keep saying, what?
Yeah.
Did you repeat that? Talk louder. You don't have to shout at me. And so it interferes with relationships. And sorry, I'm going to use the same word twice. The relationship between relationships and dementia is very strong. One of the best things you can do to preserve your cognitive faculties in later life is to preserve a network of relationships. By this, I do not mean Facebook or other digital kinds of relationships. It's not clear. My bet would be they help more than nothing, but they're not as good as in person.
Actual physical
people you hang
contact.
out with. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So in-person interactions with other people, our brains function a little bit differently. They're stimulated differently. And it seems quite clear that when people have a paucity of relationships, dementia is statistically a lot more likely and earlier.
Now, I was under the impression that's true if you lose your hearing in your middle age, but not after that. Have you read anything to that effect?
That I don't know the answer to, but it makes sense to me that the earlier you lose your hearing, the greater the impact would be.
I want to point out that I knew something he didn't.
Now, an interesting...
I wanted to point it out because it's probably never going to happen again.
All the time. It depends on there's a lot of topics Pete knows way more about than I do. But
We just haven't hit them yet.
no,
Go ahead.
There's tons of them. People who are born deaf, there's a deaf community, a deaf culture, a culture that does not regard itself necessarily as handicapped. Many people within the deaf culture would like for that status not to be viewed as a diminishment, as a handicap. And a study I don't know the answer to, but I'll try to find out for us, is do people who spend their life deaf, but they have American Sign Language and they interact with others all the time, I'm going to predict now, and next show I'll have the answer for you, if it's known. I'm going to predict that they do not suffer the same cognitive decline, that the key here is the relationships and not the physical loss of hearing.
Yeah, they still have social interaction. It's just in a different means. I also wanted to ask you this. We were talking about dementia on a previous show, and I keep hearing this from people, that a lot has to do with processed meats. Hot dogs, bologna. I love a salami and cheese sandwich, but I haven't had one in years just because of the cholesterol and things of that nature. But what is the truth about processed meats and dementia? And have they made one?
Yes, we do know the answer to this. And it also plays out on a bigger stage. So with regard to meat, there is definitely a correlation between higher amounts of processed meats in the diet and dementia. There's a weaker correlation between the total amount of meat in the diet, and here we're talking less processed, but just meats, and dementia. And it appears that the biggest offenders are beef and possibly pork. There is one group of people that more meat in their diet seems to be protective against dementia. But that is a special genetic subtype. I'm going somewhere with this.
Yes.
There's also a group of autistic people who benefit from a certain medicine, which I'm intentionally not mentioning here because I don't want to start a run on it. There is a medicine that helps a subgroup of autistic people if they have a specific genotype. The problem is popular culture gets a hold of this, and by tomorrow the headline is, Coffee Brown says eat more meat to avoid dementia. I am
Yep.
absolutely not saying that. If you have a certain genotype and you're eating the right kinds of meat in the right proportions, it could help you to delay or prevent cognitive decline. And if you have the right kind of autism, meaning a particular genetic subtype, and your doctor knows how to apply this research to that subtype, then yes, you might benefit from this medicine. But there's a ton of people out there who are or who regard themselves as being on the autism spectrum, which has become so broad it's becoming meaningless to me now. And most of them aren't this genetic subtype, aren't that autism subtype, and aren't going to benefit from that medicine. So when it hits the popular press, it always starts everybody running into their doctors and saying, give me this thing I heard about that's going to cure my kid's autism. And that is the wrong kind of mental shortcut. It harms more people than it helps.
There's also a popular fad of a doctor wanting to get publicity, and I don't know what grade of doctor they are, where they say 8 glasses of milk is totally unnecessary, 8 glasses of water, and then you read the article and it says if you have 2 glasses of juice and 4 glasses of milk and 2, to where it's sensationalistic writing just to get you to read that article.
And I'm sending out right now the Coffee Brown Special Anti-Aging Diet. With this diet, you will absolutely not live to 60. And I'm selling it for only $99.99 in small unmarked bills.
Or gift cards. We love gift cards.
We love gift cards. Starbucks gift cards. I like coffee.
Whenever anybody asks you to pay for anything in gift cards over the internet, that's a scam. Be very careful of that, just on a side note. Now, we'll save this for another show, but I find it disturbing and concerning that it used to be 1 in 10,000 people have autism, and now I believe it's 1 in 50?
Oh,
Is that
bless you
possible?
for that. This is actually a topic I've spent a lot of time on over the last decade.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the cases against vaccines, and remember, vaccines are not a thing. They have different mechanisms, they work different ways, they have different ingredients. There's no such thing as vaccines as if they were a single class of drug. But one of the cases against vaccines is the very rough correlation that as vaccines have become more prevalent,
Yeah.
autism has become more prevalent. A lot of other things became more prevalent during the same period. For example, computers, electric cars, Madonna, all kinds of stuff,
Yeah.
right? So correlation is not causation. But with autism, why is there so much more autism now? And there are a number of reasons that have nothing to do with there actually being more autism. The definition of autism has broadened. So lots of people now are categorized as having autism who wouldn't have been 20 years ago. It's not an increase in autism, it's a broadening of the diagnosis. In addition, there's a lot of people hunting for autism now that weren't hunting for it 30 years ago because it's come to the public attention, because parents want explanations for why their kids are getting C's in school, because schools get bonus money when they find students who have disabilities, and they need that because all schools that I'm aware of, all public schools, are underfunded. And because not all, but it's usually the case with medical diagnoses that they'll broaden over time. So when I went to medical school, migraines were on one side of the head, they were throbbing, bright lights irritated them, and they caused vomiting. If you didn't vomit, it wasn't a migraine, and so forth. And now it's become so broad that basically if you have severe headaches, it will get logged as migraines on what's called the ICD-9 codes. This is the governmental billing codes for medical diagnoses. It's not that migraines have become more common. They might have, but it needn't be that. And also, when I went to medical school, 9 out of 10 people with migraines were female. Only 10% of migraine sufferers were male. It turns out that once men had more permission to discuss headaches, the numbers got closer to equal.
Sure.
So the broadening of diagnosis, the broadening of the search for autism, and the fact that there's bounties on finding autism, and the fact that parents Many parents just don't want to hear that their kid is a C student, which would mean average if the grading system worked the way it was supposed to. All of these are reasons why we're seeing a lot more autism now without the disease necessarily having increased at all. Could it have also increased during that period? Maybe. But we don't actually need for that to be the case to explain the numbers we're seeing.
Now, certain phrases get thrown around. They get popular, and everybody uses them to the point where they make no sense. For a while, people were saying genius. Oh, they're musical geniuses. Yeah, Kiss are musical geniuses. He's an architectural genius. The word genius was thrown around everywhere and very rarely real. And then it was, who knows why, narcissist. Oh, they must be a narcissist. This person's a narcissist. And now it's, I think they're on the scale. They must be on the scale, the autism scale. They throw that around to everybody. People that I would look at and go, here's a perfectly normal person. They go, he couldn't answer that question. I think he's on the scale.
If somebody in your family has been diagnosed as being on the autism scale, and by the way, we could have largely the same conversation around ADHD, you almost certainly are passionate about it, and obviously I can't tell through a computer screen whether or not your family member legit has autism or ADHD or narcissism or whatever else it is that's the diagnosis of the week. My point isn't that it's a false or bogus diagnosis. My point is that it's become such an umbrella term that when people tell me this at a party, I have no idea what I should actually hear.
No, I hear doctors saying, I am so resentful of people coming in here and they mention Dr. Google. He told me what to do. You've heard that too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I will say this. There's a website called WebMD.
Yeah.
And you can get basic information from that. But they even tell you on the website, consult an authority after you get this information. This is just the basics, hopefully to head you in the right direction. And I've used it because I'm the kind of guy, I'm a worrier. So right away I think, I got the sniffles, I'm dying. That's it, I got a week to live. Like people telling me that I'm losing my hearing, so dementia is 2 days away from me. So I look up WebMD, and one of the nice things about it can calm you down and tell you, look, pal, that's not right.
Get a grip.
Yeah, but it's not a doctor.
So my grandmother's tombstone, by the way, says, see, I've been telling you I was going to die for 50 years.
W.C. Fields hated Philadelphia. He said, the audiences don't get me. They don't laugh. They always heckle me. When he died on his tombstone, it says, frankly, I'd rather be here than in Philadelphia. Go ahead. What was your point?
That's on you. So I think that they can be good as an opening bid. It's definitely the case that AI is getting pretty good at medicine pretty fast. It's not quite better than us yet, although it does win in some head-to-head competitions. But it probably will be within this decade. And physicians are going to have to think about what do we bring to the table. But part of what we bring to the table is experience, judgment. It's our job to try to help you clearly understand your diagnosis and your treatment plan, which in the past, honestly, patients haven't been terribly interested. They sort of wonder why I keep explaining the physiology to them and why I keep explaining how the treatment plan works. Like, I don't care about all that. Just tell me how many times a day to take my pills, and that's all I need from you, doc. Well, if that's all you need, AI will probably get there within this decade, but we wouldn't consider that good medical care. We want you to understand what it is that we're trying to accomplish, why it happened, how you can help yourself to feel better, things like that. So part of our job that I think we can still do better than AI, at least for a while, is to help you be your own best medical partner. Now, other docs might talk about this a little differently than I do, but that would be kind of my take on it.
Well, what if AI got taken over by an evil genius and actually told people, you can cure COVID by drinking bleach and antiseptic?
You mean like, for example, if somebody, say, I'm just picking a name out of the air, but like somebody named Musk were to have an AI and name it, let's call it Grok, and that AI was claiming that there was a race war in South Africa where there's not, Or the AI was claiming there was no Holocaust when I have personally met Holocaust survivors, people who came out of those camps. Or if the AI was, for example, being controlled by someone who was one of Trump's toadies, and we have spread a lot of conspiracy theories. In that science fiction universe, which I hope we'll never have to see, then AI would be doing more harm than good.
Yeah.
Or let's say, for example, if the Pentagon kicked out an AI, like, well, we'll call the company just to have a name, we'll call it anthropomorphic. Anthropomorphic, okay. Anthropic, I meant to say. Suppose the Pentagon kicked out an AI company because it had ethics and hired another AI company that said, well, as long as you promise in a non-binding way that you won't have autonomous robots kill people and you won't use it to spy on American citizens, then we'll do business with you. Yeah, those things would be bad, but they wouldn't happen in our world.
No, let's hope not. It's time for us to go. We're out of time. Thank you so much for viewing. Hope you tune in next time. I'm Pete Christensen.
I'm Coffee Brown.
And remember,
Don't die dumb.